Tiffany and you, one and one together make two, and all the stories that are true. Tiffany and you.
Hi everyone, it's Tiffany here, and I'm excited to be with my friend and the founder of the Asian Hustle Network, Bryan Pham. Hi, Bryan.
Hey, thank you for having me on the show, Tiffany.
Yeah, so I wanted to I always like providing a little bit of background as to how we met, which is late last year, Bryan had started this Facebook group called the Asian Hustle Network, and I ended up getting added to it by one of my friends. And I'm part of, tons of different Facebook groups, so didn't really pay that much attention to it until I started seeing a lot of people posting their introductions on my main news feed. And the introductions were really beautiful and thoughtfully shared, sharing vulnerabilities around what it's like to be an Asian entrepreneur or own a small business. And it really inspired me to want to share my story there. And then Bryan and I got connected through that. So I just wanted to say thank you, Bryan, for creating this community for us. But interestingly enough, here we are in the middle of our social distancing shelter in place period here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And one of the projects on my list for a really long time has been to start a podcast. And so I had posted on Instagram stories seeing if there was interest in having me start a podcast. Bryan was one of the first people who responded, who said, you should definitely have one. So of course he needed to be one of my first guests, and he said yes. So
awesome.
So thank you, Bryan. Yeah. So, I know you have a couple of other job titles in addition to the Asian Hustle Network. So I wasn't sure if you wanted to chat a little bit more about that.
Sure.
And then a little bit more about the Asian Hustle Network.
Of course. So about my background, I come from a software background. So I still work as a software engineer at this startup in San Francisco. But my main hustle, besides the Asian Hustle Network, is a real estate investor. So I fix and flip houses around the San Francisco Bay Area. I currently am invested into 2 different apartments, one in Los Angeles and one in Columbus, Ohio. But nowadays, my main focus is on Asian Hustle Network and creating the best community that I could for everyone who is a part of it.
For sure. And as part of some of the real estate work that you've been doing, I know you have your own podcast and also host a meetup.
Yeah, that's right. So I host a podcast called Crushing It in Real Estate, along with a Bay Area real estate meetup that I've been hosting for about 2 years now. So those are 2 things I do for real estate.
That's amazing. And Bryan has also provided me with a lot of advice about this podcast as well. So I wanted to just, any question I ever have about anything in my life, I know I can call up Bryan and he picks up the phone and it's amazing.
Yeah, I live by my phone nowadays.
I love it. So I wanted to chat a little bit more about the Asian Hustle Network. What was the inspiration behind you wanting to get it started? It has really let's go ahead and start there. What inspired you to want to start it?
So, I created a real estate meetup, and I thought to myself that if I could bring together 1,000 people with different backgrounds, ideas, ethnic race, to work together, to communicate with each other and make deals happen, I wanted to bring together the Asian community. And to my surprise, as I was researching around, I realized that the Asian community doesn't have this centralized group to unite everyone. There's groups for Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese, Koreans, Filipinos, so on. But there wasn't this group that united everyone, that created this positive atmosphere for people to work together. And I wanted to be that missing link. At the time, this is around March of 2019, I didn't know what that was. I kept talking to my co-founder, Maggie. I wanted to do something more for the Asian community, but I couldn't find the right inspiration. So I began talking to a lot of my friends that have their own personal communities. And I realized that the Jewish community and the Black community, they each have their own community to support each other. And when I saw that, I'm like, wow, we need that for the Asian community. And it wasn't until we went to Japan around April of 2019 last year that we really started to get the inspiration for this group. As we were in Japan, we went to the Meiji Shrine and we saw people write their stories on wooden tablets. And Maggie and I spent, I don't know, like 2 to 3 hours like reading everyone's story. And we're just like, wow, this is awesome. Like we want to bring that component back to whatever we're going to create. But at that time, we didn't know what it was. When we got back to the US in April of 2019, we started getting invited to different Facebook groups, particularly subtle Asian traits. We realized that, Facebook has Facebook groups and we can start utilizing that. But we didn't really think much of it because we just thought like subtle Asian traits was just all memes. And and we got invited to a bunch of our other friends groups that we realized like, hey, we should leverage this to create something great for our community. So we did. So on on November 8th, 2019, we created this Facebook group called Asian Hustle. And then when we did market research on Asian Hustle, we realized that Asian Hustle meant something else, very inappropriate. So we decided to add one more word to it. So we decided to call it Asian Hustle Network. And from there, it's been a crazy journey the last 4 months. Watching the community grow so much and take on a life of its own has been absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think what has really impressed me with the community is that it is online first, but there is, well, probably not now, but there is a desire to want to meet in person as well. Mm-hmm. And so I think the last number I saw, and you can update me if it's incorrect, but it had grown up to 11,000 members, or is it more than that now?
We're at 42,000 members.
Oh my gosh. Just multiply that number by almost 4. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. And I think what that's showing you is that there's this real desire to want to come together as an Asian diaspora community. Mm-hmm. So tell me about some of the meetups that have been happening.
Definitely. So our first meetup is in San Francisco. It's like a no network event where we had we sold out 250 tickets in about 30 to 40 minutes in San Francisco, which is like unheard of for us. We're like, oh my God, there's so much demand for this. So the first meetup was a No Agenda Meetup where people met up. We talked. We had Andrew Chow as our guest speaker. We had multiple speakers. We did a raffle to showcase people's products. It was a great event, but it was missing some components that we wanted to improve upon, which is to create a more collaborative environment. So we had an event in LA, which kind of like blew it out of the water. Like it was crazy because it was completely formatted. It was completely structured. We had proper banners, signage that came in. We have proper networking group breakouts to organize people into different industries, categories. And we had 2 awesome speakers too that really set the tone that, hey, this is what we're about. We're about giving free education and providing the right network for you guys to succeed. And every other event sort of followed that format. So after that, we had an event in Melbourne, Australia. We had a smaller event in London. We have events all over the world. We have a lot more events coming up, but because of the coronavirus outbreak, we had to cancel most of them. So now we're kind of switching over to more of a virtual format to see if that works really well. So starting next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, we have Patrick Lee of Rotten Tomatoes and Eric Lee, the co-founder of LinkedIn, come on to Asian Hustle Network as an AMA. So whatever questions you guys have, please go ahead and ask them, and we'll make sure that they get asked to Eric and Patrick.
For sure. So I know I haven't been able to make a meetup yet. And part of it is I find large group events very scary as an introvert. But you, Bryan, have made me feel very welcomed within the community. And I think to that point, I'm still waiting for a sticker, but I have hopes that maybe one day I will get one. But one thing you and I have chatted about that I think is really powerful within the Asian Hustle Network is this desire to democratize success. Yeah. And this whole idea that, when one of us succeeds, the whole community succeeds. And let's see how many others we can continue to lift up. That said, I think I guess I'll say two things. One is part of the reason that I wanted to have you as a guest on this show so early on is I do want to chat a little bit about how the Asian community has been impacted by the COVID-19 outbreak and this global pandemic we're experiencing right now. But I think number two is also just seeing how you've been able to pivot the community to focus on more virtual spaces, but still with the idea of wanting to democratize success and provide these opportunities for people to connect virtually.
Definitely. So ever since the COVID-19 outbreak happened, on a bad note, it really helped our community grow really quickly because a lot of people are now working at home. So we've been seeing our community grow about 1,000 people every 2 days now. But on top of that, we've been seeing a large increase of people submitting their posts about Asian crimes increasing, about their small businesses not doing really well right now. And it's coming in at a very alarming rate. Like we get about 122 to 155 posts that come in every single day. And a lot of them are quite negative, and it makes the Asian Hustle Network team feel like we have to do something more to support our community. And some of the initiatives that we're planning out is to combat a lot of the Asian crime that's increasing out there. So one of our new campaigns is called Hate is a Virus. And we're working together with Tammy Cho and Michelle of Uprisers. So we're creating this new campaign to really combat like all the xenophobia that's coming up because of the COVID-19 outbreak. And the whole purpose of that is to bring awareness. And we want to add a very interesting component to kind of make people feel more normalized, is that we're trying to host a virtual concert on top of our message that, hey, like, just be safe, be aware of all the crimes that's going on in the world, protect each other, be prepared to support each other. And not just that, like, we're also grouping it with a donation campaign that our goal is to raise $1 million to support all the small businesses who are struggling right now due to the coronavirus outbreak.
That's amazing. I am actually going to have us take a little bit of a break. I want to come back and revisit this because I know it's such a hot topic right now. So we're just going to take a break. And then when we come back, we'll chat a little bit more about the Hate is a Virus campaign and some of the things that are going to be happening over the next couple of weeks. Even though this is a presidential election, there are many more candidates on the ballot besides the president. Go to Ballot Ready for a nonpartisan guide to your entire ballot. From there, you can compare candidates based on stances on issues, biography, or endorsements, and then save your choices to use when you vote by mail or in the voting booth. You can even request your absentee ballot or make a plan to vote early or on election day. This election matters. Make sure you have a plan to vote and vote informed. This year, with changes to polling places and vote by mail laws as a result of COVID, it's more important than ever to have a plan to vote. 30% of voters take the time to vote and then leave some part of their ballot blank. This is a missed opportunity to choose the leaders of our communities. And it's okay if you're unfamiliar with some of the more local positions. We recommend hosting a ballot party, get together with friends over Zoom, split up the research, and go through your ballots together. Go to ballotready.org and enter your address to make a plan to vote and vote informed. Hi, and welcome back. This is your host, Tiffany, and you're listening to Pioneers. We are chatting with Bryan Pham, who is the founder of the Asian Hustle Network, also a software engineer, also a real estate developer. We're chatting a little bit more about a campaign that he has launched with Asian Hustle Network, the founder of Better Brave, and Michelle from Uprisers, to help combat some of the xenophobia and racism that's been happening around the COVID-19 coronavirus outbreak. Before the break, we were chatting a little bit about a social media campaign, a fund, a concert that's happening. Full disclosure, I am participating in the campaign. And I will share that over the past couple of days, I have been a little afraid to leave my house. And it is less fear around the public health situation because I know I can wear a mask and I can wash my hands and use hand sanitizer or wear gloves, and more so around fear of if someone is going to harass me or attack me. Bryan, I don't know if you've been hearing similar stories like that.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of stories like that, and it's been coming in at a very alarming rate in the network. I see it so much that I know this movement's going to make a difference, and that we need to spread this movement even quicker because the news are coming in. It's pretty darn alarming how fast it's coming in, you know, and seeing other Facebook groups who are centered around Asian crimes. So this Facebook group called Crimes Against Asians. I watched this group grow from 1,000 members to almost 10,000 members in 1 week.
Oh my gosh.
And that's very, very alarming to see, like, how unsafe we feel as Asian Americans, not just Asian Americans, but Asians around the world about the situation that's going on right now.
What do you think, or why do you think it's become so exacerbated? So I will share that about 5 weeks ago was the last time that I had traveled by plane. And on the way back, I had gotten flagged by the CDC as someone who had traveled back from mainland China. Mm-hmm. And I got questioned by the security people and sent to a quarantine room and given a mask. And at that point, I had spoken out about the fact that, you know, this is a really hard time for everybody, mm-hmm. but it is not an excuse for us to be violent against people based on their race. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I guess curious to hear your thoughts about what has happened and why is this still happening five weeks later?
Yeah, especially given all the lockdown that's going on around the United States. I mean, I picked up some news today from my property manager in Ohio. He told me that, you know, the governor of Ohio has now locked down the state because of the coronavirus outbreak. And that's very alarming too to hear because, you know, states like Ohio don't have a large Asian population, and yet they're still in lockdown. So places who are affected by the lockdown, who have a large Asian population, it feels very, very unsafe right now for us to be walking around. I'm very concerned about my parents too, because they live in Los Angeles, and you know, honestly, they can't speak English that well. So I'm highly concerned about their safety. So that's the reason why we want to push out hate of the virus so soon, is because we want to be able to combat racism and xenophobia against Asians right now. And we notice a large amount of Asian-owned businesses aren't doing that well right now. A lot of them are heavily impacted because people are now spreading untrue facts about how the coronavirus was spread. So unfortunately, a lot of non-Asian people believe that by eating Asian food, you have a high chance of getting the coronavirus, which is not real at all, you know?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of misinformation that's hurting a lot of our community, and seeing a lot of news that come out about all these Asian-owned businesses having to lay off a lot of their staff to like really get through this tough time. Is the reason why we're pushing out this campaign so hard, and you want to have a unique component to it too. Like we want to embrace the online culture. We want to embrace being virtual right now. So that's the reason why we're pushing hard for the online conference to happen, where we can still be productive and still bring a community together and have artistic talent while still keeping everyone safe and really practicing social distancing. And, you know, we are now leveraging our network between Michelle, Tammy, and I to really get the attention of the masses. And how we do that is we reach out to a lot of influence like Tiffany and a lot of
community leaders.
Community leaders, or, you know, Tiffany is everything, A, B, all and above. And having people like Tiffany speak up about this cause will help us create a bigger voice and eventually a bigger movement that would stop all the hate that's going on in the world. And that's our goal.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, I think one of the for me, I know that a lot of small businesses are struggling right now, and I don't want to discount or discredit the fact that that is happening, but what has been happening, I guess, in local Chinatowns and with a lot of small Asian-owned businesses is that even before shelter in place or lockdown happened, these businesses were suffering because exactly as you said, some of the misinformation around going to Chinatown. So when a lot of these businesses, and a lot of this is based on things that I've read, when a lot of these businesses were expecting their biggest business to happen post Lunar New Year, and then the news around the first coronavirus cases to come out, and that creating a sense of racism and xenophobia and not wanting to go into local Chinatowns when they were expecting all of that business to happen and it didn't. And then it's just been perpetuated for weeks up until now. Mm-hmm. Then I think the second thing that's happening is, our country's president is tweeting, and this isn't even fake news, is tweeting and calling coronavirus Chinese virus. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing on the Hate is a Virus Instagram a tweet from Mark Ruffalo, who is a great ally, about how when someone who is a leader shares rhetoric like that, it gives permission for everyone who follows that person to follow suit. So I think it goes both ways, right? And so I think it's really powerful that you are reaching out to Asian community leaders and having them share with their followers that this behavior is not okay. Mm-hmm. And what I'm noticing as well is that a lot of my friends are joining in and supporting. And unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of my followers already know that that's not okay. And mm-hmm. and so I guess I'm curious to learn a little bit more about how you're thinking this campaign is going to combat some of this misinformation. Is it sharing of the facts? Is it watching this hashtag go viral?
Yeah, it's a combination of everything you just said. Like, we want to make sure that we straighten out the information. So a lot of our information that we post onto our Instagram, it's all tweets. Soon it's going to be a bunch of facts. We're going to have newsletters that's going to come out soon to help, combat all the misinformation. At the same time, we want this hashtag to really go viral too. So we're having people share this on their Facebook, their Instagram. On Facebook, we want them to use the Hate is a Virus frame to be used over their profile picture to bring more awareness. On Instagram, we're really big on having people wear face masks, which says our message, hashtag Hate is a Virus, and a little description pointing back to our cause. And the reason why we're having a campaign is because we believe in the power of influence, the power of the internet during this modern time period to be more effective than the press. And that's Tammy, Michelle, and I, we're not the type of people who can sit back and watch this unfold onto our country without making a difference if we could. And right now we're pooling our resources, our minds, being resourceful, finding the right people to really spread this message, because we're sick of this. Like, we hate seeing this happen. Like, we want to put a stop to all of this. And, as you mentioned, businesses are impacted by this, but there's also a high tick in crime as well. Like, we saw a lot of Asian-owned business being vandalized right now, being destroyed. People are getting harassed in the street. Asian people are not being called coronavirus, and just so much hate going on in the world, and we just want to straighten things out.
Yeah, and I think so the other conversation that I had was with my friend who's a psychotherapist, Gina Maffa, and she and I chatted a little bit about how when you are in a state of panic or in a state of stress, it makes you do kind of jerky things, unfortunately. But it can also be an opportunity to spread compassion and community care. And so one of the things that you guys shared was a video where someone had said, let's be proactive about positivity. Mm-hmm. And I think that in a time where there's just so much uncertainty, having people like you and Tammy and Michelle taking the lead on this really provides a beacon of hope for all of us to be able to follow. So thank you for that. So I think I am really excited about the social media part of this campaign. I know you've mentioned some of the virtual programming that's going to be happening. You mentioned a concert that's going to be coming up. Do you have any more details about what that's going to look like yet?
That'll be our surprise coming up as soon as the
Okay.
unfolds, and we'll start announcing it through our Instagram. But stay tuned for that. We're excited.
Okay, yeah. And then, we'll definitely take some time at the end of this to plug whatever social handles are relevant for this. But I guess I'll just plug it now too. It's at @hateIsAvirus_, or you could just follow the hashtag #HateIsAvirus and then be directed to the main Instagram page. So a $1 million fund to help support local Asian-owned businesses. I think that's amazing. I have mentioned this publicly. I am going to be matching any contributions to the fund up to $1,000. So head over, to the link in my bio, or I'll provide a link in these show notes to learn more about the fund. I guess wanted to chat with you a little bit more about that, because I think even as you were thinking about getting Asian Hustle Network off of the ground, this was part of that idea initially, wasn't it?
That's right. So prior to repurposing our fund, we were giving away $1,000 to aspiring entrepreneurs every single month. And given the coronavirus outbreak, we figured that we should think bigger, that we should repurpose the fund and actually try to fundraise more money into this fund so we can give back to more people. We had some people reach out to me, hey, is it okay if you just give away $1,000 every month to one person? But it made Maggie and I feel a little bit uncomfortable because we were not only helping one person. So now instead of helping one person, we're thinking bigger to help, probably 1,000, 2,000, even 10,000 people, depending on how much money you raise. And that's our vision right now. We just want to be able to support our community as much as possible. For
sure. Yeah. And I think being able to have that fund is really going, in addition to, all of the initiatives that are happening right now around supporting small businesses during this time, is going to keep some of our favorite Asian-owned brands afloat. Do you have any ideas yet around how you're thinking about potentially application process, or how will the funds be distributed? So the way it is right now, we're going to designate a portion of the fund to nonprofits, support all the hate crime that's going on in the world. But as for the actual giveaway, we're doing an application process. So right now I'm working with a couple of pretty successful restaurant owners to help me come up with a system to vet for these applications to come in. We mainly want to be able to help a lot of the restaurants who are struggling because of the coronavirus. And we realized that having an application process will bring in a lot of people who were struggling before the coronavirus outbreak. So we want to make sure that the money goes to the right people and bring the application process. For sure. Yeah. And I know you and I have chatted a lot about mutual aid efforts that have been launching since the outbreak related to, the disability community, which is where I spend most of my time, LGBT people who identify as LGBT. I've seen it for artists and creatives, people who work in entertainment, wellness, people who work in wellness. And so I'm excited to kind of see, and for me, I think this is probably the first mutual aid effort that I've seen within the Asian community. If there are others, either you can let me know, or if you're listening, you can let me know as well. But I'm excited to see this fund come together. Thank you, Tiffany, and we appreciate every single support you've given us so far. You're like we're the light to other people, but you're the light to us. It's all kind of that. Is the movie called Pay It Forward, where the guy draws the diagram where he shows just this like ripple effect. Yeah. So I will say I have noticed just for myself that I have been a little bit less active during this time. I find that Gina and I talked about grief in our conversation. And for those of us, so right now what is happening is it is a global grief pandemic as well, in the sense that with the social distancing and shelter in place and lockdown, people are losing their ability around human connection, physical human connection and touch, unless you have roommates or partners that you live with. And so that is impacting how people are reacting, and a need to really hone in on yourself and check in on your own mental health during this time. And so I have noticed for myself that as someone who lost a parent as a child, it's triggering that grief, but then also the grief around human connection and being able to meet up and having IRL in real life community. So I'm just really excited by your leadership. Always, 100% happy to support. I know you said the exact same thing to me. Last thing I wanted to chat about, I know that there is potentially like a merch campaign where proceeds are going to be contributed back into the fund as well. Is there, and I know things were moving a little bit slower because shipments and different things that were happening in California.
Yeah, so that's the main objective too, is that we're going to raise some money through the merch as well. And because of the coronavirus outbreak, a lot of our production are being delayed until Wednesday. So hopefully after Wednesday, March 25, you guys will be able to purchase some apparel to support the cause.
I'm excited about that. And I actually think this show will go live potentially after that date. So I will provide in the show notes a link to the Asian Hustle Network. If there are people who identify as Asian who want to check out the Facebook Lives with the 2 exciting guests that you mentioned, and also links to learn more about how to get involved in the campaign. So all of that said, was there anything else about the campaign you wanted to chat about?
Nothing else. We covered everything. And thank you, Tiffany, for giving us the opportunity to speak up on it.
Of course. And thank you, Bryan, for being such a willing guest as I try and learn how to be a podcast
You
host.
did great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Tiffany and You. This is your host, Tiffany Yu. My ultimate hope for this is that we can co-create something beautiful together. So if you have feedback or suggestions on topics you'd like us to explore, I'd love to hear from you. This podcast now has its own Instagram handle at Tiffany and You, and you can also find me across social media at I'm Tiffany Yu. That's the letter I, the letter M, followed by my first and last name. We're hoping to drop episodes every Tuesday, so I hope you'll join us for the next episode. And a special thank you to Root Hub for my opening and closing podcast medley.
Tiffany and You. This one is done and another coming soon. A special rendezvous for Tiffany